The Terran Swan case is one of my most popular cases. It has been taught to MBAs and executives all around the world in a number of different kinds of courses. I think the case has proven to be so versatile because Terran is really good at what she does, something that is very difficult to do in companies, to somehow go into new markets, very different markets, and also to do it in a way that is really an example of collaborative leadership. The final thing that you see in this case is Terran is not only good at thinking about how to manage her own team, but also manage, if you will, her network, manage her relationships with her bosses and peers so that she can get access to the resources she needs to actually get the job done. A very challenging job, I might add. Mostly I teach this case to men. And one of the most interesting experiences I had in teaching the case was in Scotland, when the head of a trading desk of a major bank said to me, "I want to grow up to be a mini Terran Swan." And I was shocked and I said, "Do you know Terran Swan?" And he told me he had done the case, I guess when he was in school. And he said, "I want to be like her." And what struck me about that is, one, it's wonderful to think that here you have a trader in a Scottish bank who wants to be like this African-American woman who is pregnant. And indeed, that is wonderful for me to see because we all can begin to understand that all of us have the capability to be leaders and to get away from, if you will, the stereotypes we have about who can lead and who can't.
I was the head of programming and on-air creative for Nick Latin America, part of Terran Swan's original team.
My role at Nickelodeon Latin America was originally part of the launch team, and our mission was to launch a network from a business plan that Terran had prepared.
I was hired as the VP of Communications originally for Nick Latin America, and my job basically was to create buzz for a channel that hadn't even been approved yet.
First, let's set the scene. This was Miami in the 90s. The MTV people were all super cool and gorgeous. On the other hand, Nickelodeon, we were this kind of motley crew of earnest people who aspire to create content for kids.
I remember being at ad sales meetings early on where people would look at us and say, Nicky, like, what is this Nickelodeon thing? And we were fighting at the time Discovery Kids, who had just launched in the region, but Discovery was a very known brand. But Discovery was like, they don't know anything about kids.
I like to say that working Nick Latin America when we first started was a bit gritty. It was like a political campaign. We were all on that mission to create this orange channel in Latin America, but we didn't exactly have all the resources that we need, and we just made it happen. And we were in this office space that was just sort of this nasty office space. It's in Miami Beach, and people used to think, wow, cool, you're in Miami Beach. But the reality was it was just kind of this nasty space that we took over. In fact, it had been a dentist's office before, and one of my employees kept saying, I used to go to the dentist here. And it was that kind of nondescript, weird space, but we just made it work. And the reality was that we were all so committed to the mission that we just figured it out.
A few years later, I was literally in a cave in Bariloche with my mom, where there were about 12 people eating dinner in this cave. And someone asked me what I did, and I said, I work for Nickelodeon. And they said, oh my gosh, Nickelodeon, we were at your launch tour in Mar del Plata. And I really felt like, oh my gosh, we have arrived.
Are there any lessons about running a team virtually that you can learn from this case? There are so many because Terran was ahead of her time. She understood a couple of things about talent. One is you have to meet the talent where the talent wants to be met. If you want a person to work for you as a company, you may need to be flexible and let them live where they want to live. The second thing is she understood if we're going to work this way, we actually need to all be T-shaped. We need to be deep about something, our area, our function, but broad enough across the top and know the enterprise as an enterprise so that we can make judgment calls when someone's actually not in the room for that person.
In our case, a lot of people talked about our commutes and that we went to New York and Atlanta and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is we would also go into market 2 to 3 weeks at a time. The creative team would have to go, the marketing team would have to go, the programming team at different times. So we all had to trust in each other and that we were doing what we needed to do. And the biggest person that trusted us was Terran. And once you're getting that from the top, that they've empowered you to do what you need to do, that's the perfect scenario.
Terran really operated with a trust battery. You either gained trust or you lost trust based on how you managed expectations, if you delivered what you said you did. And this went throughout the organization. It really was an effort to push down decisions to where they most effectively could be made. I think the third piece of it was, she set a high bar. She rewarded those who met expectations. She gave them, again, more responsibility and authority. And these were people that were allowed to really pivot and react to circumstances and allowed Nickelodeon to be a very flexible organization.
When Taryn left for New York City, the team, we were devastated. But really, it wasn't because we were worried about how we would run. It was more because we were worried about her as a friend and colleague. And we were this little tight family. But we were all empowered to do what we needed to do. And we all understood what our roles were and also cross-pollinated with each other to make sure whatever it took to get things done, we could do.
I don't think we skipped a beat. I think we all had very clear roles. We had very clear missions. Taryn, again, like her presence was so strong, yet quiet. She didn't need to be in our faces because she had so empowered us to do our jobs. Everybody could share their feedback and input on the core overall company decisions. We could debate, we could have healthy disagreements, but as soon as we walked out of the room, we were a united front.
Taryn had set up an operation where each of us as leaders had our own stake, our own ownership. The culture was ours. When I became GM, our business goals remained the same. And I think it's important to know that I had to approach this with a lot of humility. I was not the first choice to be GM. I was surprised Valerie didn't take it. I'm sure she was offered it. And I would have happily worked for her and probably 3 or 4 other people on the executive team. I was trusting that this executive team would help get me and all of us across the line.
I learned a tremendous amount from Taryn as a leader. She was really exceptional in that she had a quiet strength that had no ego involved. Her job was to do right by kids and parents and ultimately the bottom line. She knew she had to run a profitable business, and there were many challenges along the way, as you guys have read about. But at the heart of it, she wanted to do the right thing. And she was also never afraid to admit what she knew and what she didn't know.
Taryn is fundamentally a learner, not a knower. She goes into conversations. She leads by asking questions, by being vulnerable, by not knowing, but by asking. She was fundamentally humble, but her vision was powerful and one that she patiently and carefully built up with the contributions from the team she had in hand. So we all bought into it because we all felt like we owned a piece of it. With remote leadership, with her on the phone every week, she had set a course for us. She'd set a path for us. She'd set a culture in place that allowed us to continue to grow and be successful.
One of the things that was great about Taryn was that she loved everything about all of us. We all had individual styles and experiences and different passions, but she knew how to channel those all and let us be who we were. And the reality is that she did that from the top on down, in the middle, every which way. I used to always say, even the facilities manager felt like he was contributing to the success of the channel. Even if he was just working in the office, he had a little bit of that orange blood in him too. And that really had to do with the idea that Taryn gave everybody a voice.
It was really impacted by Latin American culture itself. And so since the majority of our staff was, Latino, Latina, we were influenced by that and by spending so much time in the region. My time at Nickelodeon Latin America really had a huge impact on where I am today. I often say that Taryn was really the best boss that I ever had, and mostly that was because she gave me incredible confidence in myself. And I have continued to have little Taryn on my shoulder saying, "You'll figure it out. You're smart. You'll figure it out." And so I genuinely am so unbelievably grateful to Taryn for giving me that confidence in myself.
Her humility, her kind of vulnerability, all of them kind of set a mood and established a culture that allowed us, even when she wasn't there, to really grow in a way that I've tried to capture, whether successfully or not, with other teams that I've led since then. I think the big lessons for me from my Nickelodeon experience, and there's nothing more powerful than screwing up something, was the fact that you had to kind of stay connected to your customers. That's one of the situations where my strength was my weakness. Our acquisitions head came to me with this kind of ultra Japanese animation that she insisted we should acquire, that kids across the region would really scramble for. I looked at it and I rejected it out of hand. Unfortunately for me, that proved to be Pokemon. So yes, I'm the guy responsible for Nickelodeon, which had the first shot at turning down Pokemon. That lesson in humility has stayed with me ever since.
I think this case is relevant today for two reasons. First, it deals with basic dilemmas that organizations face as they try to go into new markets. Globalization is actually quite difficult, and this case illustrates the difficulties, the challenges of that, particularly when you're in the middle of an organization. The second reason why I think this case is still very relevant today is because Taryn was very forward-looking. She's leading in the way that we need to lead these days, no matter what, building agile, innovative teams that can get things done. She actually deals with diversity. She's diverse herself. She leads in new ways that we didn't see back then, remote leadership. So I think it's relevant because it deals with basics, but even when she was back in the early days, if you will, she was leading in the way we need to see leadership happen today in our organizations. So the fact that this case has worked the way it has and has meant so much to so many people just thrills me. And I'm here to tell you that if you work for Taryn, you are going to be stretched, you are going to become T-shaped, deep about what you know, but broader across the top, and you're going to deliver excellence. The other thing I'd like to say about this particular case is it really teaches us about what happens when you're driven by purpose, when you really deeply understand the customer, or want to make sure you understand the customer, and you deliver that customer what they deserve. Taryn was determined to make sure those children in Latin America got the kind of product and experience they deserve to have, even though they were not necessarily a population that had a lot of money to pay for what Nickelodeon would normally charge. She wasn't going to cut corners. Children everywhere make a difference. I have done work with Taryn on a number of different projects now, and that sense of purpose, that commitment to making sure that the customer has the experience they deserve, is something that I see in her and goes back to her value system. And it shows up not only in her professional life, but also in how she thinks about her family. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and you're blessed to get to know Taryn. You should be jealous of me because I get to actually see her all the time.